Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I have another random Netflix review. But I've been watching a lot of crappy, shitty, newer films, so and this one's actually more my wheelhouse, which is a classic 1970s film, which I've actually never seen before. Obviously, I've heard of it. I saw the remake, the shitty remake, years ago when it first came out. It is 1973's The Wicker Man, which I will say, of all these crazy cult films, this is the best one. This is the better version of Midsommar, which I got a lot of crap for my review of Midsommar. I'm sorry, I didn't love it as much as everyone else did. One of those movies that people, if you don't praise it to high heaven, then you just didn't understand it. Which, yes, I fucking did, and I still didn't care for Midsommar. This movie actually did a lot that I thought Midsommar failed. And there's a lot of Wicker Man, this, and the shitty remake in Midsommar. Hell, I even think, if I remember correctly, the remake to this has a guy in a bear suit at the end. But, and I believe this is based on a novel. Yeah, based on Ritual by David Pinner, even though he went uncredited. It's directed by Robin Hardy. He also directed Cowboys for Christ, which is based on a book that he himself wrote. But it was retitled The Wicker Tree, which isn't a sequel, but it parallels a lot of stuff from this film. And it stars Edward Woodward and Christopher Lee. One of my favorite non-Hammer Christopher Lee roles. I think he did a great job with this. I thought it was just going to be a cameo appearance, but he actually plays a very pivotal part in it. And it's all British. I mean, it was made on a budget of £500,000 or euros, I'm guessing. Euros. And it made 58,000 at the box office. So I don't really know what that translates to, but it did very well when it came out. Some people call it the Citizen Kane of horror movies. 6th greatest British film of all time. Number 45 on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments. And The Wicked Tree came out in 2011. Okay. The remake, 2006 with Nicolas Cage is beyond shitty, and for a lot of different reasons. I haven't seen it since. I would have to watch it again before I did a review. But I really like the story. It's a formula that I can't really think of any examples on top of my head, but I know we've seen before, like where someone goes to a place and you find out that place is fucked up for whatever reason, and it ends up being their downfall that they even went there. And Edward Woodward plays this guy. I know I sound like shit. Yeah. It was like 60 degrees yesterday. It snowed this morning. Now it's warm again. That's what living in Maine does. And if you have allergies, you're fucked. So Edward Woodward plays this guy, Sergeant Howie, who he's a very devout Christian. He's tasked with looking into this disappearance of a young girl named uh, Rowan Morrison. Wow, I don't know why that's hard to say. And he ends up at this island, which where the disappearance took place, called a summer isle. And upon getting there, he finds out this is not a normal island. People, upon arriving, start exhibiting these pagan beliefs, such as people dancing naked outside. He goes to the school where Rowan attended, and the teacher is just talking about phallic symbols and all this shit to these young girls. So he's torn, but not really torn, but he's in this place that is very against his own religion, and he's just drawn into this rabbit hole because at first people are saying how this girl had never existed. Of course, he finds out she did. It does. And, you know, it's just pretty much this weird web of this mystery that he's trying to get to the center of. And Christopher Lee plays Lord. Okay, for some reason I thought he had a first name. Lord Summer Isle, whose grandfather founded this island. It created this sort of pagan sect that he is now the lord of. And we have other people like Diane Salento plays Miss Rose, the teacher. Britt Eklund plays Willow, who I've seen her before. She kind of reminded me of Carol Cleveland from Python. She was a Bond girl, but I wouldn't know her as that. As that. Which, the one scene I didn't really get was, there's a very long scene in which she's singing naked and like tapping all over the walls while the sergeant is in the next room. But it is kind of a slow burn of a film. A lot of 1970s well-made horror films are slow burns. It is all building towards this one ending. It doesn't have a lot of creepy scenes. It is more about tension. I guess the first real creepy or sketchy scene would be when he, for me anyway, well, he decides to exhume the grave of the girl. Because, you know, they say, oh, she doesn't exist, but she's in the register for the school, so he calls all the girls and the teacher liars. Then you find out she died or has been killed, but there's no death certificate or anything. So he goes to the cemetery, and I immediately recognized the gardener and the gravedigger as Aubrey Morris, who played Alex's parole officer, Mr. Deltoid in Clockwork Orange. He exhumes the grave, but he finds just a rabbit. And so, you know, he goes back to the Lord's house where the teacher is there, tosses the rabbit, and they say, oh, something to the effect of she's come back as this rabbit, or her a physical form after death has turned into this rabbit. And Edward Woodward did a really great job. I believe he's Scottish. Well, English, but I could have swore his accent sounded a bit more Scottish. But he did a really good job at playing this sergeant who he's trying to use, you know, rationale and deductive thinking to solve this mystery, but his Christian background and belief is really, I wouldn't really say getting in the way, but, saying how, oh, this girl turned into a rabbit, rationally, we'd be like, well, that's bullshit. You put a rabbit in her grave. But because of his Christianity, it's more, I guess it more so angers him that it's kind of hard to explain, really. I probably should have thought of this out more. It's like, and I don't want to say he's torn because he's not really torn, but there's these layers to his character where, yes, he is this detective or this sergeant, but at the same time, he has to solve this case that goes against his own beliefs. And I think the actor Edward Woodward did do a great job with that. And Christopher Lee, he's Christopher Lee. He's got that class and that charm, and just all the while being very sinister at the same time. How it even, I didn't even explain the creepy part. He decides that he's gonna have to go back to the mainland to put it all back together, and his seaplane has been sabotaged. So while he's out trying to get the plane started, on the shore, like, there's a bunch of like wood and rock walls and whatever, and we see people kind of popping their heads up with animal masks watching him. So that's kind of the first, and it's maybe a little more than halfway through, real, I guess, sign that, okay, things are kind of creepy. Well, not really sign, because right from the beginning we know these people are covering something up, or they're hiding something. And he thinks that the girl was used for a sacrifice because he finds this picture of her with dead crops. So he thinks that their harvest had failed, and that's why. And I'm guessing a maypole or a maypole dance is in a lot of different religions, because that's Midsommar also did, was it the maypole queen or whatever? Because as soon as he gets to the island, there's like the maypole dance. But what do they call it? May Day. There's this ceremony on the 1st of May where there's like this parade through the island. You have I think the man lady, the guy dressed as a lady. You have the man beast, a guy with a costume with a big, like, animal's head on it. And then you have the man fool, or punch, I guess he's called. And they're sort of the head of this parade where everyone has a costume of some kind or an animal head. And the sergeant beats up the guy and ties up the guy who is supposed to be in the fool's costume, because it's this full body costume with a mask. And Christopher Lee, he's the man lady. He's got makeup, or like this pale face makeup, long hair, a dress, and he's doing his dance at the head of the parade. And I'm guessing the guy that was supposed to be the fool, which is Britt Eklund's character, Willow, I'm guessing it's her father. I think he's known as like the town drunk, because Christopher Lee keeps saying, come on, you call that dancing? You're a fool, be a fool. Did you get drunk today? And so they get all the way to this seaside cliff, and then that's when they show the girl, Rowan, and the sergeant runs up to save her, and she's like, get me away from here, they're crazy. They run through this cave, they find a way out, and there we have, Willow, the teacher, and Christopher Lee again, and you find out she led him there. The girl was in on it. So, I'm going to say spoilers here. I mean, it's from 1973. It is a popular horror film. It is I guess, considered one of the best from the 70s as far as the critical consensus. I really enjoyed it. Do I like it as much as other 70s films like, say, The Omen, or The Exorcist, or even Chainsaw Massacre or Halloween? No. But I still very much enjoy The Wicker Man. I would say it's one of the best from the 70s. But I'm going to say, and I'm sure many horror fans have seen the comedy as it's become now with of Nicolas Cage, and you can probably tell where the story's going. Even if you haven't seen it, you probably know what happens at the end of it. But I'm going to say spoilers anyway. Highly recommend it. It's on Netflix. And yes, I do think it is way better than Midsommar. Sure, Midsommar has... I would say it does have better cinematography because Ari Aster does know how to shoot a beautiful film. The score for this is a little all over the place. You either get like minstrel music or, you know, different types, sort of like It Follows, but not really, as the score is just kind of all over the place. There are bits that really work. But yeah, spoilers starting now, but I do highly recommend it. If you liked Midsommar, check it out. If you didn't like Midsommar and you want to see a better version of it, still check it out. But spoilers. Here we find out that everything that the sergeant has gone through or done has been carefully orchestrated. They made it so the pictures looked like they pointed at her for the fail of the harvest. And so how they knew he was going to take the fool's costume, I'm not really sure. But, you know, because the crops failed, they had to do a greater sacrifice. As Christopher Lee says, you know, not an animal or a small child. Although great, he says, the best one we could possibly give is a certain kind of adult. Which is, you know, there is a criteria. Like, it has to be someone who comes on their own free will. Which he did, even though he did it because he was tasked because of his job. But he did go on his free will. I guess a fool, or the man with the power of a king, that uses it in law enforcement, something along those lines. And, you know, that's when, you know, they tell him he's the perfect sacrifice. They're going to use him for sacrifice. And he tries to tell the people, you know, it's not gods or sacrifices that made your crops fail. It's your soil. You know, things aren't meant to grow here. That's why your apples failed. Which I thought was interesting. He's this devout Christian, and he's trying to bring in, like, science and logic as to why, not really science, but, and of course they dress him up. And one part of the ceremony I did like, there's this part where these 5 boys with swords, they all put their swords together, and then again in such a way that it forms a pentagram, and they raise it, and people chant the word chop, and everyone has to walk through. The pentagram is lowered, and then it goes up, and they walk through, and someone, for whatever reason, is chosen to get chopped. And it's a girl, but it just cuts the costume head off, not her real head. But anyway, the actual sacrifice, there's this giant Wicker Man, as you could expect to see. And I didn't know this until I saw it, but there's all these different compartments within the Wicker Man that has pigs, calves, um, goats, chickens, all just I guess for just a greater part of the sacrifice, and he's put in the torso, and they all do their song, and he's singing his songs of his religion, and he's doing his prayers, and of course he dies, and I like the end shot where we see the head of the Wicker Man burning, and then it just collapses, and we see the sun over the horizon of the sea. And I know there's been a number of films that involve cults of various types, not just on an idyllic island where everyone wears like white gowns and flowers and stuff like that. It could even be something like Silent Hill or any kind of cult film. I would say this is one of the better ones. Lords of Salem. Technically, that is a cult film. But I liked how this one was shot. I really liked the story. I like stories of how like the main character that their own investigation or their own arrival to a place is their own downfall. Or, I mean, the ending to The Vanishing is a little different, but I do like stories like that where the main character is brought down through the rabbit hole of some kind, and they end up paying the price for it. It is a kind of movie where technically evil wins because they do get to do their sacrifice. Christopher Lee, in one of my favorite roles of Christopher Lee's, he just, like Price and Cushing, he just brings that class, and like Cushing, he brings that English class and charm, even when he's being very sinister. The whole cast did a wonderful job. Edward Woodward, Diane Salento, Brett Eklund, Aubrey Morris, they all did a great job. I would say the score was a bit all over the place, but I really did like the cinematography. Very beautiful shots. There are some really, like the shot when the swords are together and it forms the pentagram. It's like aerial, but then we sort of see it go like this, and then it's like up above. Some random wide angle shots. And I like how it's, I love slow burn films. It takes its time building towards something with a good payoff. And it's not littered with jump scares or even creepy moments, really. It's all just sort of this tension and dread that keeps building up until the end. In fact, you can even say it's like a mystery thriller up until the end, or even just a regular mystery film up until the end. It really doesn't follow the sort of horror movie conventions up until the big reveal. But yeah, I really like the original Wicker Man. Again, the remake is absolute shit and laughable. And yes, I did like this way more than Midsommar. To me, this is a better, people go to this place where there's this sort of pagan cult that's only celebrated by the inhabitants of this place. And it all leads towards this big ritual of sacrifice. I think this is the best movie of that kind, even over Midsommar. I really enjoyed it. It's one of the better movies I've seen on Netflix, of ones that I haven't seen before in a while. So there's that. And it's another great, slow burn, well-made horror movies from the 70s, which is one of my favorite decades. So yeah, Wicker Man, 1973. Really good movie. I like it better than Midsommar. Thank you for watching.